Ladies and gentlemen, your boys are here. Friday night, y'all know what time it is. It's the Play Callers. Let's be real cool with it tonight. Tag Team Champs, Interactive Sports Talk, in the building. It's never a game. And hey, we got NBA Finals sliding right in. WNBA news and rumors. You know what I'm saying? And of course, little NFL tidbits sprinkling there for you as well. So I'm joined as always by the other half of the dynamic duo,
aka the right side of the screen. It's your boy Stephen Box. Release his right side. Yeah, I don't know. It might not even be the right side to other people, man. But
that's a different one. But I'll take it. So, ladies and gentlemen, before we get into things, just want to quickly remind you who he is. Maybe your first time hearing it. You might hear it every week. You might never hear it, but you're about to hear it right now. Let's go.
The Play Callers.
All right, and back in the building. Y'all know what it is. Y'all know what we do. Y'all know how we get down. So, the only place to start things out that makes any sense. NBA Finals. They set. Dallas went in, and they did a Trick Williams all over Minnesota last night, or the last game of the series, as we knew they would. And on the other side, Dallas just walked all over, stumped the mud hole in, walked it dry. The Indiana Pacers. So, hey man, you want to start with the Boston series, or you want to start with the Dallas series?
I mean, there's about the same amount to say about both of them. So it doesn't really matter.
Let's start with Dallas. What's your thoughts on the Eastern Conference Finals?
You mean Western? You said we're going to start with Dallas.
I meant to say Boston. We'll start with these.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, look, at the end of the day, the Eastern Conference Finals went about as we expected. Felt like Indiana probably would win a game. And, if they don't lose Tyrese Halliburton, they probably do win a game. But we all know it wasn't going to really go more than that.
Indiana had a great opportunity in game one.
Mm-hmm.
But they said, nah, we don't even want no parts of that. You know what I'm saying? We just going to go ahead and let y'all get it because we want to hold the L like we always do. Boston was like, you sure? Because here's the dub, man. Y'all can have it. And then Indiana was like, nah, take it back. We don't want the dub. We like the L's over here. And then Boston was like, well, I mean, we'll take this one. And finally, the last time Indiana said, well, here's the dub, Boston said, fine, we'll take it. And that was the game. Because I talked about before the series started, I expected a 5-game series because Boston was going to have one of those games where they played poorly. They played poorly in game one. No doubt about it. We can talk about the statisticals all day, but if you looked at that game with your eyes, Boston played bad. They were down, I believe. It's been a couple of games ago, but they were down like 5 or 6 or something at the end of regulation. And then they got I think it was 5. They got a shot. Then they got a 3 in the corner by Jaylen Brown right at the buzzer to go to overtime. Once they went to overtime, I was like, oh, that might be Indiana's only chance to win. They just let pass them up. So if you don't take advantage of a team when they basically lay the win in front of you, you're not going to win a game in a series where you're already expected to win maybe one game. So, I mean, I feel like other than that, Boston was solid in every game. They always made sure that they closed and got this thing done in 4 to get a break. A lot of people talked about, Boston had an easy way to get to the championship and people were missing players. Well, I mean, if we're going to talk about Boston, we do need to talk about Indiana too, because same path. It's just the Indiana lost the guy in the series, and Boston's had Porzingis out the whole playoffs, and we haven't heard anybody say, "Oh, well, Boston's been winning without Porzingis." So it's just kind of it's funny to me how the narrative is, "Oh, they beat everybody because they had somebody out." They had somebody out too. You can only play who's in front of you. We say this about different sports and different conferences all the time. Western Conference is clearly stronger than the East, but even so, Boston did their thing.
Yeah.
Can't
I
fall.
mean, the thing is, honestly, I don't really agree with the idea that we have to talk about Indianapolis and the route that they took, because no one really had expectations for them. No one expected them to win this series. Nobody expected them to go to the finals, win a championship, anything like that. So, you could talk about the fact that they got where they did because of injuries, but at the end of the day, it's kind of an irrelevant point, because the only reason people are bringing up with Boston is because Boston is a championship contender. Now, if Boston had lost this series and we were talking about Indiana, that would be a different story. But I don't know. I can't sit here and think to myself that we need to be concerned ourselves with how Indiana got here when they just got swept. They're
Well, let me
irrelevant.
ask you a question. Was Dallas the team that you expected to be in the finals?
No,
Was Minnesota a team that you expected to be in the finals
no, but
or
that's
the
not the
conference
same thing.
finals?
That's not the same thing.
Okay, well, you go ahead and talk, and I'll finish once you're done.
I mean, I see where you're trying to go with this. That just because Indiana wasn't expected to be there, but the point being is Dallas and Minnesota both, when they got to the finals, you thought, well, we both thought it was going to be a more competitive series. Clearly, Minnesota played their championship in the previous round, but Indiana just never had a chance. Like they were the team who was lucky enough to get there to get demolished by Boston. That was it. That was their role. So do I care that they beat up on injured teams? No, because those injured teams would have got smothered the exact same way. It didn't matter who faced Boston in the Eastern Conference Finals. They were getting spanked.
Okay. So that's not where I was going. Where I was going is we had 4 teams in the conference finals. So however the path that they got there, they got there. So if we're going to discuss what one team did, then we should be discussing what their opponent and the other teams did and how they got there. That's the point. It was a foregone conclusion that more than likely, unless it was maybe like a healthy Milwaukee or a healthy Heat, that whoever they played, they were more than likely going to beat. But the point is, everyone took a path to get there. And I would like to see more consistency in discussing how everyone's path got there, because we've talked about Boston, but we haven't talked about anybody else's path. And to me, that's a joke, because everyone took a different path to get there. So whether that path was they didn't play anybody, whether that path was they beat everybody, there should be equal coverage for every team that made it to the conference finals, and then for both of the teams that make it to the NBA finals. And I didn't see a lot of talk about Indiana, but had Indiana won, then all of a sudden everything would have changed. And we all felt that Indiana was going to go in there and get spanked. But until the games happened, this was before any games even happened. Before any games happened, it was 2 teams that had all their pieces, because Halliburton didn't get hurt, I don't believe, until game 3, if I remember correctly. So there were games that they played against Indiana at full force and still took care of it. So the way I'm actually going is there were 4 teams there and only 4 teams. So all 4 of those teams' paths should have been talked about, whether good or bad. But in the Eastern Conference, we only wanted to focus on one team. If you want to say, oh, it's because we knew the other team was going to win, we knew that Denver was going to beat Minnesota, but they didn't.
Well,
so in series, you do have upsets. You don't expect them to happen, but you do have upsets. So that's why every team deserves equal coverage, whether it's for positives or negatives. You took a path to get there. It should be talked about. And it wasn't even on the Eastern Conference side. And honestly, it wasn't even all the way around, because Boston got more of the coverage and more of the flack for how they got there than some of the other teams that probably could have gotten a little flack. Because if we look at Dallas' path, let's talk about Dallas' path for a minute. And we're going to go over and talk about this series. Let's go ahead and switch over now. Dallas beat a Phoenix team that was literally trash. Kevin Durant and the trash. Trace trash. Then they turned around to be the Oklahoma City team that had SGA and trash. Guys that may be better in a year or two, but they weren't. They got the number one seed, and everybody was like, bet. If they're the number one seed, I need to make sure I get to see where I could play them in the second round, because that's going to be a much easier matchup. And if your name wasn't Minnesota, you're right. So Dallas has a very soft path to get to the finals, if we're being honest. They played those two teams, and they played a Minnesota team that already had their championship when they beat Denver, the team that they were put together to beat. But we're not talking about that. We're only talking about Boston. Boston can't win because Boston didn't beat anybody. Well, if we're really looking at it, you want to say that Minnesota was a great victory because they beat Denver? That's fine if you want to go that route. But again, they couldn't show up against Dallas the way they showed up against Denver. Dallas dominated them. So clearly they were overmatched and outplayed in all 5 games, even the one that they won, because they only won by a few points and they played a perfect game. And Dallas didn't. So we're not talking about that, but we're harping on Boston and all Boston didn't do anything to get there. Let's look at Dallas' path. That wasn't the hardest path I've ever seen. It's quite easy, to be honest. Where's the coverage on that?
So just a quick note for you. They actually did not play the Suns. That was Minnesota. They played the Clippers. Not that that's much better considering.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. That was
that's much better, but just.
But that's no better either.
Yeah.
And then of course Minnesota gets there by they run over the Suns team, then they turn around and they play the Denver team that they were built to beat. That swept them last year. That's their championship. They go on to the finals and they get beaten up. And then the Clippers team, I did have those switch, but the Clippers team always hurt. Where's Kawhi? Always hurt, but he's on the Olympic team.
Well, man, here's the thing. I don't know why you're so upset about this. I really don't. It's not like
you're not upset.
So you're not
it's
even
not upset. And if you're thinking I'm upset, you don't understand.
Well,
it's not upset.
Well, we've had
upset at all.
We've had this conversation on 3 shows. So to me, it feels like you're a little upset.
Not upset. I'm saying equal coverage needs to be provided, and it's not.
Well,
I don't care if Boston goes out there and loses 4 games. I don't care if Dallas loses 4 games. I don't care who wins. I'm going to watch because it's interesting. But what I want to see is everybody's narrative be out there. That's not being upset. That's wanting to make sure that everybody's narrative on how they got there. Because what I don't want to see is 2 teams that really have similar paths to get to the finals. When you break it down and we want to talk about one team like, oh, they're these killers because they made it to the finals and they're so great. And the other team is like, whatever, they barely made it to the finals, but they really have the same or very similar path to get there. So let's just cover both of them and call it what it is. If you consider that me being mad, then I don't know what to tell you. Your perception's off.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, when you talk about, Dallas's path to get here, they did beat the Clippers, which we all knew that Kawhi wasn't going to be healthy. But I will remind you that you actually picked the Clippers to win that series.
And what does that have to do with my argument now? That has nothing to do with my argument now. I picked Denver to beat Minnesota. What does it have to do with it? That has nothing to do with it.
But what I'm saying is when you picked the Clippers to win the series beforehand, you can't then go back and say, oh, they're super trash. Like that.
Well,
to me,
if we want to go back, let's hold up a minute. If we want to go back, I said if they're healthy.
Well, you actually said even if they're missing one of their stars.
I said they miss one of their stars, they still should be good. But I said if they're healthy, they will definitely win the series.
Yeah, but they were only missing one star.
They were missing one of the stars. Yeah. I said if they're healthy, they should be able to win. If they're missing one, they still should win. But it's going to be hard if they don't have everybody. If they have everybody, they should win.
So arguably, the Clippers, it was a good win for them, right? Not gonna say they like pulled off the greatest in the world or anything like that. But to win 4-2 in that series, I think is actually good.
That's your thoughts.
You can say what you want about Oklahoma City, but the reality is they weren't injured. They were the number 1 seed, in the West. You went and beat the number 1 seed in the West 4-2. Are we not going to give them credit for that?
Are we just gonna say number 1 seed, or are we gonna actually break down the team?
Okay, but they were still the number 1 seed, though, right?
But were they not a one-man show? What we're both saying is correct, but I'm not gonna just sit there and say, "Oh, they beat the number 1." Everybody knew that was a weak number 1. We've even said ourselves that was a weak number 1.
Yeah.
So let's not go back to revisionists and then talk about like, oh, they beat a number 1. Like they did beat a number 1, but it was a weak number 1. You have to acknowledge it. If you're not gonna acknowledge that, then don't bring me number 1. If you're not gonna acknowledge that was a weak number 1.
Okay, so what we're going to do then is our preview for the finals is going to be the Mavericks beat up on a injured Clippers team, an overrated number 1 seed in the Thunder, a number 3 team in Minnesota that already accomplished everything they wanted to accomplish by beating Denver, and then Boston only got where they got because they had an injured Miami, an injured Cleveland, and an injured Pacers team. That's what we're going to go with, because I mean, if I saw road to the finals, I wouldn't want to watch that crap.
Right. So what the point of all of this that you seem to have missed is, if we're gonna dump on one, then we have to dump on both. Obviously, it makes more sense to say, all right, we're gonna talk about how great Dallas played in the playoffs, how Luka finally got to the finals, then how the Celtics got back to the finals. And, now we had this great matchup between the Celtics and the Mavericks. But what I'm saying is there's a lot of people, professional media, as well as, semi-professional media, I guess we'll call them, that have been talking about Boston's role, but they're acting like Dallas went out and beat the 2 best teams in the West by actual team and not by somebody getting a tiebreaker to become the number 1 seed, but the actual best teams out West to get there. Now, I'll give them props for winning, because you can only win, again, who's in front of you. But if we're going to apply that to one team, we need to also apply that to the other team. If we're not going to apply that to either team, then that's fine. But let's stop talking about it for just Boston and not mentioning that, hey, Dallas did have an easy road too. They did have to get through that Minnesota team that beat Denver, but they handled them pretty easy.
Okay, let me ask you this.
That's my point.
Let me ask you this. Is there any falsehood in saying that everybody Boston played was injured?
I'm sorry?
Is there any falsehood in saying that everybody that Boston played was injured?
No, at some point in the series, no.
Yeah,
but Indiana did have their guys for 2 games, everybody, and they lost it.
Yeah. I mean, listen, here's the thing. For me, Boston was the best team in the East. They were always going to be the team in the finals. It didn't matter. If somebody wants to run around and say the only reason they're there is because they played injured teams, I'll tell that person they're an idiot. But if you're pointing out the fact that Boston did have an easy route, that's not really arguable. They did. They had a very easy route. And you can argue about that Dallas didn't have the toughest route in the world, but it was arguably tougher than what Boston had to deal with.
All right. So AP says Rudy trash. What up, AP? AP also says Boston will always give a team 1 game, laugh out loud, to spice the series up. They tried. He does say Boston getting more rest time, so Boston will be fresh. These are all good points. And then Rod said, "What's up, fellas? Mavs in 6 games, and Denver needs to make some moves. Murray's a poor man, Tony Parker."
I mean, both teams should be fresh. I mean, the first game's not to June 6th, so both teams are gonna get like a full week off.
So the only part of your comment that makes any sense is "What's up, fellas?" After that, trash. The rest of that comment, trash. And the end of it, super trash. Trash. But you are entitled to your trash opinion, Rob. Appreciate you watching.
Shame.
But so yeah. On the finals, we do have Dallas we do have Boston. How do you think they match up?
You know, it's interesting. If you look at the season, Boston did win both games quite handily, right? Um, Boston has been the best team in the league all year, and you know, Dallas with their record would have been like I think the 2 seed in the East, but they still would have been significantly behind Boston. So on paper, you have to look at Boston, right? Um, but Minnesota is a team that's all playoffs. We can't talk about their defense. Talk about how great they were playing defense, and they didn't play much defense against Dallas. Dallas shredded them. So the question is going to kind of be where we seeing, right? Is Dallas going to be able to score like that against Boston, right? And then the question mark I always have with teams like Boston who kind of live and die by the three is what happens if you go cold, right? Because all of a sudden, these NBA players nowadays, man, they start missing from three. They're not gonna stop shooting them. They don't care if they go 1 for 48. They'll keep jacking them things up though. So there are opportunities for Dallas, right? I think Boston, like, as we've said numerous times, will pretty much give you a game anyways. So there's going to be opportunities for Dallas to be able to steal the series, but just looking at who is the actual better team, I have to go Boston.
Did you say that who you say would have had the second best record in the East?
Dallas.
Dallas. Okay. I cut out for a minute, so I didn't hear that. I'm gonna go to AP's comment here because it kind of sets up where I wanted to go. So AP says, just like Mars said, Rudy and Anthony should have been going hard in the paint, no Diddy every game. So I'm gonna tell you the truth. I don't know why anyone, and I mean anyone, expects Rudy Gobert to go hard in the paint. I don't understand that expectation. If you have an expectation or you're expecting Rudy Gobert to go hard in the paint, I don't know what to tell you. Like, have you been watching? Do you think he has another gear for the playoffs or in certain games? Rudy Gobert is a poor man's anybody. He can block some shots. He'll get defensive players of the year because he'll get some statistics because he'll have guys funnel to him and he'll get blocks and he'll get rebounds. But this guy is not an offensive weapon. And before he got there, keep in mind, his own best player on his team was dunking on somebody. Nobody scared of Rudy Gobert. So this is not a guy who instills any type of fear or concern in the rest of the league. Like, let's be honest. The only reason why he had effectiveness against Denver is because they don't have sense enough to have a backup that they played. So when you put him out there against an already winded Nikola Jokic, who isn't the most athletic guy already, yeah, he looks a little bit better on defense. But let's not forget, Jokic smoked him a couple of games, all three of them. But they did get the better of him as he wore down. You get to this series, they got a bunch of bigs that they rotate out. So there's nobody worn down. And Rudy Gobert went back to who he was. Mr. Disappear. You got Mr. Disappear, and then you got Mr. No-Show. And Mr. No-Show actually had a decent game. But again, they had large athletic wings who we talked about from the beginning of this series was going to give Anthony Edwards problems. So what people wanted, just to be clear on this comment, is for Anthony Edwards to go inside against bigger, more athletic guards with young big men that want to swat everything that comes in there, and we expected him to get his points down there. I just don't get the logic behind that. And I understand that we're talking about a lot of people who understand NBA basketball, but I'm just saying when you're looking at that series, when you're looking at the players, Rudy Gobert never went hard in the paint.
Right.
Anthony Edwards, he can go hard when he's playing against guys like his size, maybe an inch taller, but they have a lot of long athletic length on Dallas, and that was a problem for him. And if you meant Carl Anthony Towns, Mr. No-Shows never went hard in the paint either. He wants to be a three-point shooter. He stands out the 3-point line and he thinks he's big Steph Curry. That's who he thinks he is. This man had lanes in both of those series. They didn't even have to go 7 games with Denver, to be honest with you, but Karl-Anthony Towns decided to shoot threes, and he had a couple of games where he went off. But just like any good 3-point shooter, you're going to have bad games. And when he has bad games, he does not have the testicular fortitude to go in the paint and bang. He's not going to get to the paint, number one, because that ugly, slow dribble, the other team is going to take it from him. And then as soon as he gets touched, he wants to go flying and try to get a foul. But he much rather pull threes. Flaw in Anthony Towns' mentality. That's not a game thing. That's a mentality thing. So I would have rather said Anthony Edwards to Karl-Anthony Towns. Them jokers are not built for that. I get where people are coming from. You looking at size, you looking at height, but you got to be built to be an inside player, and they're not.
All I'm going to say is this. Looking at those two guys and the way that they play in the paint, I don't know if y'all remember the way that Pau Gasol used to play in the paint. But those two guys make Pau Gasol look like an absolute savage in the paint. And that dude's
cold-blooded,
not a savage in the paint.
And that's cold-blooded. Because, yeah, that's cold-blooded. Wow, that's cold-blooded. But, yeah, that's my thing about that. And the reason why we didn't really go much into Minnesota is because we all saw what happened in Minnesota. Minnesota came up to a level where, seriously, they already had won the championship. They choked a little bit, and they got spanked by a team that was just better than them.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't ready. They overshot where they should be. When you overshoot where you should be, at some point you run up against somebody that says, nah. Trick Williams. Trick all day. And that's what happened. Shout out to them, though, because they did have this season.
They came out and they gave a full on effort for one game to avoid getting swept. And once they did that, they're like, okay, we done.
And then Anthony Edwards said they didn't even do it that game. He said that wasn't even everybody's best effort. He said they didn't have a game where everybody played their best. I mean, I disagree. I think that was game 4. But, that's what Anthony Edwards said. So,
well, man, if they didn't have a game where everybody played their best, we'll all have to at least agree game 4 is as close as they came.
They can't get no closer than that. They can't get any closer. I agree. So, yeah, man. Back to the finals. For me, on the side of Dallas, they have a guy who has a championship in Kyrie Irving. They have some guys like PJ Washington that were bought in, that have bought into that system. Derek Lively is there to help out. Of course, Luka, many other pieces. So my thing is, you have that. You have that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota kind of wore themselves out as well. Because if you think about it, the 7 games hurt both teams. And you talk about, well, Anthony Edwards, he's young, and it shouldn't bother him. Well, let me tell you, that young man ain't never been this deep in the playoffs before. So having those 7 games to get there, that affects him too. Because like he said in his interview, I believe it was last night, he said, look, man, now I know. No days off. I got to get in the lab. I got to be working. I got to have my stamina right. I got to be able to go to get here. Not to win, but to get back here. And then I got to be able to go another level to win. So now he's seen it. Now he understands. I think that's dangerous. So I would put this loss as a good thing for that young Minnesota team. But I also put this as a great thing for Dallas, because if you are going to come out of the West and you're a team like Dallas, this was your year. When Denver went down, when OKC got that number 1 seed, I think that made a lot of people in the East salivate, because like, oh, OKC is number 1, not Denver, not Minnesota. It's OKC. And I think of the 3, that was the team in a playoff series that you would rather face if you were the number 8.
Yeah.
And then, not that one, then have that as the team you have to fight in the second round, whatever, just because that was a easier win for most people. So I'm not too surprised at the outcome. I do agree Dallas has a really good chance. They're not in a situation where they're going to get swept or they're going to lose in 5 games. They're a good team. They're going to put up a lot of competition for Boston. Boston has a lot of guys that can guard Kyrie and Luka, but Kyrie and Luka don't have to both be on. If one of them can get off in each game and the other one be okay, that's going to do a lot for them. And then again, guys like PJ Harrison and guys that were brought in, they play well.
Yeah. I think that's going to be the secret for Dallas, right? Is they've got to continue to get great levels of play out of their role players.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think Luka and Kyrie both will show up, right? It will be interesting to see. Boston has a little bit better defensive backcourt than I think most teams do. So it will be interesting to see if they're able to maybe at least slow one of those guys down. But I think on any given night, the other guy can more than step up to pick up any slack from the other guy.
Yep. And I did say Harrison, excuse me, guys, it's PJ Washington. I was thinking about my old UNC player. But yeah, PJ Washington. But it's the bench, right? It's always going to be the bench. It's always those guys that come off like Derek Lively, Josh Green, Tim Hardaway Jr. when he plays, Markieff Morris when he gets run, Dwight Powell, Josh Green, like those guys. It's those guys that can fill in for moments and buy the team some time. Because once you get to the finals, it's about trying to buy your team a little bit of time to be the best that they can be versus, attempting to have guys go out and really do a lot. And then some of these guys are great on the defensive end as well. So that helps out as well. So I think this is going to be a very interesting series from both sides. Let's talk about Boston. What's your thoughts on Boston in this series?
I mean, when I look at Boston, I see a team that obviously is super talented. They've been here a couple times, right? And that's where things get a little interesting, right? Because we know when you get to this level multiple times, there's an assumption that eventually you're going to get it figured out and get over the hump. But we've also seen guys who never figure it out. They never get over the hump, right? And I think a really big move for Boston was actually bringing in Holiday because he gives you that little something extra. And it just so happens that he also gives you the biggest thing that's cost you the last couple times that you've been in this position, right? Not having a true ball handler. So I'm not even going to say a point guard. I'm just going to say a ball handler.
Because
yeah,
Jaylen Brown had that ball in the games. You're like, bro.
So that's why I feel like the addition of Holiday might be just enough to put them over, right? But their willingness to let teams hang around, their willingness to take games off, the fact that they're not particularly well coached, those are all concerns to me in this series if I'm a Boston fan, right? That's where I'm worried because I think Dallas is good enough. Like you could give them a game, but if you give them 2, you might be in trouble.
That's a good point. They're gonna give you at least 1. They're gonna do that.
Yeah. But if Boston can find a way to steal that other one, or Dallas can find a way to steal that other one, because Boston comes out there and has one of them lackluster nights. Now you got to ask, does Boston have a testicular fortitude to go out there and bury them 4 games? Or do those ghosts, do them footsteps start coming in and that choke job starts?
There's 2 other good pieces besides Drew Holiday that Boston have that haven't choked at this point. We've always gotten great production out of Al Horford. Now, Al Horford is ancient, but when he plays good, right? Doesn't matter how bad things are going. He's always been really well at that. Now, the other piece is Kristaps Porzingis. He's never been in this situation, so he doesn't have the negative background. All the reports are he should be able to log some minutes during the series. He may not be able to play as much, but he should be able to log some minutes, which I think may be a help because that size will help. And then especially if he's on limited minutes, he should have pretty fresh legs because he hasn't played in a while.
Yeah.
Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, they're gonna have to do their thing. Derek White's gonna have to show up big. I like ball head Derek White. He's a beast. Pushback hairline Derek White wasn't as good, so I think the aerodynamics worked well for Derek White. There's a lot of pieces that they have, and AP just asked a question saying, saying you think Drew Holiday can stop Luka? Okay, defense. So let me explain that too, AP. If you listen, they have 4 people to guard those 2 guys, and I just named you those 4 people. So you got Derek White, you got Jason Tatum, you got Drew Holiday, and you got Jaylen Brown. That's a formidable foursome of people to guard Luka and Kyrie. So I'm not saying that Drew Holiday is going to have to go out there and guard Luka for 30 minutes a game. I'm saying that rotation of 4 people has a better chance than anything Minnesota threw at those 2 guys.
Right.
So they're going to help to make things difficult. Luka's going to get points. Nobody's going to shut Luka down at this point in his career. Kyrie's going to get points. He's that wily veteran, and even if he's not getting points every game, he's going to find other ways to help the team, i.e. passing and doing those things. So they're going to help because they're going to always have 2 of those guys in the game whenever Luka and Kyrie are in the game, at least 2 of them. So that's going to be something that's going to be very beneficial. I think people have gone too much to, this person versus this person, that person versus that person. That's not the NBA we playing today. We playing the NBA. Well, that's not the NBA we watch today that they playing today. They play where there's a lot of scheming, a lot of zone, a lot of switching. So there's not really one guy versus another guy. It's having enough people that can guard a guy. So when the switch happens, there's still a guy on him that can give him solid defense and not be a mismatch. Boston has that ability. That's dangerous. And that's something that Dallas hasn't had an opportunity to really play. And we talk about the 2 games in the regular season. They only had this complete team for 1 game against Boston. So the first game against Boston, they didn't have this team. They were playing with that old Dallas team that was not very good.
Yeah.
So they had this team, but it was right after the trades were made. So they didn't have a chance to really acclimate to Dallas system and get everything straight yet. So while those games do show who has won, I don't think there is much of an indictment on Dallas as they would be if this was the team that they had played or they played later in the season when Dallas had kind of figured everything out.
Yeah.
So then we're really looking at more of like a 50-50 here as far as who's going to win. I believe that Boston's going to win in 6 or 7 games. But again, as my co-host did put it, if Boston goes out here and gives away games and doesn't have the mentality of, well, y'all got this one, okay, we're going to come out and get the next one. Because a lot of teams can get dogged one game and come back and then go ahead and do their thing. But some teams can't. In the finals, Boston hasn't showed that they can yet. So my expectation is they jump on them. They end up giving up 1 out of the first 3. But then they get back on it and finish winning. If that switches and Dallas starts out with like a 2-0 lead, that may be more difficult for Boston to come back from.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and the other thing is, look, Boston is going to do everything they can with switching and putting different people out there and trying different stuff to slow those 2 guys down. Yeah. And that's why we're saying at the end of the day, it's going to come down to Boston's role players, right? If they can go out there and they can hit shots and they can be legitimate scoring threats, that eliminates your ability to double team and send extra help towards Luka and Kyrie.
You meant to say Dallas. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Yes, I thought I did say Dallas, but yes. That is what I meant.
So it's a good series. I think if we're going to have these 2 matchups, if it wasn't going to be Denver versus Boston, for how they played throughout the playoffs, Dallas is the next best team that we could get out of the West, right? The 2 stars, a lot of good role players, and a guy, PJ Washington may be an emerging third option on the team is going to get paid. I know he's happy. I saw a video of him saying that how you go from worst to first. Because remember, this guy was on Charlotte. So he's like, how you go from Charlotte to Dallas? And now we in the championship. I mean, he was real happy. And I get it. And then the guy that they got from Washington, I get it too. Now, one other thing I wanted to bring up before we switch over, and we spent a lot of time on NBA. It's all good. It's NBA. We're getting into the end of it. It's all good. One of the things I wanted to bring up was that was a trade that was offered. I don't know the exact details, but to bring Kyle Kuzma to Dallas. And he didn't want to go because he didn't think Dallas had a chance to win. So everybody's like, that's stupid. You look so stupid. But you got to remember something. If they get Kyle Kuzma, they probably don't get PJ Washington and the guy, I forgot whose name was, that they got from the Wizards instead. So you got two guys that are being components of this team to help you win, whereas you would have just had probably Kyle Kuzma because you got to think about contracts, stuff like that. So I think Kyle Kuzma did Dallas a solid. Unknowingly.
I do want to make one additional comment here before we move on.
Sure.
Dallas fans, I know the Rangers won in baseball. I know the Dallas Stars are in the NHL finals. I know you're excited that your Mavericks are in, but even if the Stars and the Mavs win, that is where the win streak ends for the city of Dallas.
Why you got to do like that?
The city of Arlington is not going to be joining it either.
Oh man.
Although technically the city of Arlington's already involved because their stadium is actually right across from Cowboy Stadium, so they're in Arlington too. The Rangers are.
So Scrub says King Kyrie and Cheesecake Luca all the way. What up, Scrub? Scrub also says shout out to Kuzma not wanting to go to Dallas. Absolutely, man. Because if he goes to Dallas, I don't think his thing look like this. Like you got to understand, a lot of times is where a person goes and when they go. So we're gonna slide over and a little WNBA news real quick for you. And then we'll talk about a few NFL things here. So one of the things I want to quickly bring up, Caitlin Clark is frustrated by the physical WNBA play. She feels like she's getting hammered. Ma'am, I just want to make you aware that I've been trying to tell you and your fans, right? All the Clark section was with you. And your queen. This is not like going to another higher level college. This is going to the pros. You're getting it's physical. Nobody's just chilling. They are there to play physical. They're there to wear you down. And yeah, it's frustrating for you, but it doesn't speak to your heart. You know what I'm saying? Your inner dog when you're complaining about it. All the rookies. I haven't heard any other rookies come out and say, oh, the game is too physical. I'm just hearing you, Caitlin. So, you're going to have to get with it if you're going to survive. You're going to get touched. You're not going to scroll through and just do what you want to do and nobody touch you. Nobody can keep up with you and all that in the W. You're the rookie. I know that you feel like you're the face of the league and you have a right to feel that way by all the that you've been provided in the offseason. Once you got drafted and all the love and contracts and everything. But now it's about play on the court. And you are getting hit, but you're not the only one. Everybody's getting hit because it's the WNBA, highest level of women's basketball. Any thoughts you want to add, sir?
Well, my question is, because we talked about this with some of the comments directed at Caitlin Clark by some of the other players and some of the coaches. And we pointed out that they were asked, right? So was this something that she was asked or is this something that she volunteered?
Let me see if it specifies.
Okay, because I was trying to look it up while you were talking there, and I couldn't find anything that really said that. And the thing is, I kind of get a little bit of you're not used to getting hit so much and not getting foul calls. but you got to adapt your game, right? Like you got to say, okay, that's how they're calling it. That's how they calling it. You know, I mean, she's not the first person to ever complain about it. Even I remember back in the day, Shaq complained about the fact that everybody was doing the hack Shaq and he can't get a foul call. But you know, you just got to adapt your game to it. That's what it really comes down to because people are going to bring it, and you know, all the positives that have come along with you getting all the attention and all the recognition. Well, there's also a drawback to that. People kind of see it as an easy way to say, hey, if I want to make a name for myself, I can do so by going out here and hitting this big target on her back.
Yep.
And that's what people are going to do. They're going to come at you because they feel like they should be getting more attention. They should be getting more respect. So what's the easy way for them to do it? Come at you.
Yeah, she got it. She got a tech in the same game against the Seattle Storm because after she had hit a shot, her and one of the players got from the Storm got into it, her and Victoria Vivens. But it was in her post game. It doesn't say if she was asked or not. One I could kind of catch real quick, but it basically she didn't say anything when it happened, but she was complaining that there was that she feels like she's been getting hammered and they're not been calling it. Now, other rookies, Angel Reese for one, got hard fouled by Alyssa Thomas from the Connecticut Sun. Angel Reese just said, "Thank you," clapped her hands, and then asked anybody else wants. You know, and that's kind of the thing you have to have.
Yeah.
She's been saying a while now. Caitlin Clark has that opponents are getting away with a lot. Mm-hmm. So it's not just a one-time thing. She's been complaining. She's been very demonstrative on the floor. She's kind of getting to the point of reminding me of somebody else in Scrub Zero. Yes, we are calling them Clark sexuals because that's what they are. And then Scrub also says, my girl Angel Reese took that flagrant too and got back up and played, unlike Caitlin Clark and her crying over calls every game. Yep. That's what it is. Like, I'm not like, oh, Caitlin Clark, she shouldn't complain about calls or she shouldn't try to get calls. I mean, I don't care what you try to do. But I'm just saying, when you do it and you're like the only person of your class that's really complaining, right? If this was something that all the rookies are like, yo, we getting beat up out there and they're not calling, then I'm more to be like, all right, but you're the only one. It's kind of like, okay.
Yeah. I mean, look, the question is, you know, there's a couple things here, right? So number one is she getting beat up any more than anybody else? And I can't sit there and say for sure because I haven't obviously watched every single game, watched everybody play, and watched every single play that's going on, right? But we know there's a target on her back. So I'm sure that she is getting more physical play than some of the other rookies are, right? But the other thing that you have to kind of stop and look at, especially when you start comparing, like, oh, like Angel Reese, like, well, they also have different body types, right? So if someone is a little bit stronger, someone's a little bigger, they're going to be able to take physical punishment in a different way, right? Caitlin Clark's not particularly huge, right? That's not her game. That physical style is not her game. So I think it's throwing her off. And that's where the frustration is really coming from, right? It's the fact that it's throwing her off. And that's why I said at the end of the day, I mean, you could complain about it. I understand why you think you're entitled to stuff, because ever since you announced you're going to the draft, they've declared you as the greatest thing ever for women's basketball. So of course you feel entitled to everything. But adjust your game. That's what it comes down to, because the more you let people know this bothers you, the more of it you're going to get.
Well, I'll be real with you. I watched a lot of Angel Reese the last couple of years. She doesn't play a physical game either, but she understands that she has to adapt that to the WNBA.
Yeah.
She understands this is not college. AP says it right here what needs to happen. Caitlin Clark got to get to the gym.
Yeah.
You got to get to the gym. You got to get a little bit more fit. You got to do some more squats. AP also says the number one pick crying already. It's not a good look to have the scrutiny and then complain. Now, I get that you're getting fouled. And I'm not saying you're not getting fouled because I've seen the game. You're getting hit. Like, I'm not going to say and be like, oh, ain't nobody touching you. You're getting hit. What I'm saying is you got to do a better job of saying, you know what? This sucks. I don't like it. But not always have to make it demonstrative, not always have to say something about it. Sometimes you just got to take it on the chin and be like, all right, I don't like what y'all doing, and I'm going to figure it out, but I ain't going to sweat it right now. And I don't feel like she's doing a good job of that part. So she's allowing it to get to her mental state. So people are saying, oh, we want to take Caitlin Clark to the game, be physical with her, talk trash to her. That knocks her off her game. And you know, if you give people an advantage in any sport, they're going to take it.
Yeah. See, it's like I'm going to push back a little bit on Scrub Zero's comment here, saying Clark's showing too much weakness with her complaints. The thing is, it's not about. The thing is, it's not about the complaints, right? It's like, I mean, look, if you want to talk about complaints, I mean, we could literally close our eyes and point to just about anybody in the NBA, right?
She bringing the NBA mess to the WNBA. That's what happened.
Yeah. So I'm not gonna be like overly critical about the complaining about not getting the calls per se. But what I am gonna say is, look, it's a competitive sport, and as we both have already said, you put it out there that this bothers you, you're not gonna get less of it. You're gonna get a lot more of it. So, I mean, hey, look, you might have to go get a couple teas. Right? You might have to get up in a couple people's face. Might have to push some people away. Might have to let them know what time it is. Might have to let some people catch a couple of chicken wings on some rebounds. Do what you got to do. You want people to stop fouling you so hard? Yeah, look, you want people to stop fouling you so hard? You got to let them know that ain't going to phase me. Because as long as they know it's going to phase you, they're going to keep doing it.
Yeah, but she got to get the gym for them chicken wings to matter.
Yeah, she got to definitely.
Because her chicken wings right now is going to be nothing but like you getting chicken wings from your little niece. You know what I'm saying?
She might injure herself chicken wing at somebody right now.
Right, like right now. But bump up into some people. You know what I'm saying? Put your butt into them like they tell you when you're young, when you play basketball. You know what I'm saying? Be a little physical sometime. Scrub agrees. Scrub says, girl got to get her weight up. That's definitely true. Yep. Other quick WNBA note. There are some other things. The other quick one I want to touch on before we just things here. Is that Tiffany Hayes, a former 10-year player with the Atlanta Dream, and she played with the Connecticut Sun last year, came out of retirement to go to the Aces. Now I'm gonna tell you this: people might say, "Oh, you retire and you're gonna retire." If the Las Vegas Aces call you and say, I want you to come play for us, you ain't going to play much, but, we need another veteran on the bench. We need a strong player. You go because it's the Las Vegas Aces. And you try to make sure you make it all season because you're going to get a championship. So shout out to Tiffany Hayes, and I don't blame you. If the Las Vegas Aces call me, I'm going. I'm kidding, y'all. I'm not Joanna, man, but I'm just saying. A little over-exaggeration there, but I'm not Joanna, man. Before we go down that path.
I was trying to think what your name was going to be on the team, but I'm just going to leave it alone.
I ain't going to go there. All right. So quickly for NFL, we're just going to talk about one thing here. First-round draft picks. A lot of those guys still have not signed. But a quick list of the people who have signed. So Drake May has signed his contract with the Patriots, number 3 pick. Marvin Harrison, of course, signed with the Arizona Cardinals, the number 4 pick. Malik Neighbors, New York Giants wide receiver. He signed his deal, number 6 pick. Number 7 pick, J.C. Latham, offensive tackle, who went to Tennessee. He signed his deal. Then we got to skip down to number 11, Olu Fashanu, the OT to the Jets. He signed his deal. Bo Nix signed his deal with with Denver. I mean, when you're already 30, what's the point? You might as well go inside a deal. What you waiting for? Talisi Fuaga, New Orleans Saints, offensive tackle, signed his deal. 14th pick and then 13th pick for Las Vegas. Bart Bowers, he signed his deal as well. And then Latu, Indianapolis defense end, he signed his deal. Byron Murphy, DT for Seattle, has also signed his deal. You got to go in a couple more picks. And one of Box's boys, Jared Verse from Florida State, signed his deal with the Rams. Then we got to, and that was the 19th pick. And for now, you got to skip all the way down to 27. Darius Roberts signed his deal with the Cardinals. Sorry for him. No, I'm just kidding. Number 29, Tyler Guyton, the OT, signed his deal for Dallas. Nate Wiggins, the DB Baltimore, has signed his deal. And then at 32, Xavier Leggett, wide receiver from Carolina, has signed his deal. So those are up to date now as who has signed their deals in the first round. Box, any thoughts on anybody think that you're surprised that they haven't signed? Anybody that maybe should have waited, or kind of good with everybody making a decision when they want to sign or not? I also think, how does that affect how hard you may or may not go, like at your rookie camps and OTA and everything? Because you're not signed yet technically, so you go too hard, you pull something, you don't have the contract technically yet.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, man, it's not something I really concern myself with at this time of year. Like you said, you do kind of wonder, but at the same time, you're not out there really doing a lot at those camps anyways, right? So it's not a huge deal. Now, if you get to training camp and you're not signed, now we have a conversation.
So Scrub says, I wouldn't worry about these rookies not being signed until July, as long as they're not missing these OTAs in May and June. It's nothing to stress about. Exactly. The last thing is this, and I was saving this, AP, so I appreciate you. So Gable Stevenson, former Olympic gold medalist, former WWE wrestler that was essentially dishonestly discharged from the WWE, will be a defensive lineman for the Buffalo Bills. He was signed from a tryout. Basically, he knows he has a lot to learn. They know who he is. They know his background. And he's trying to become the second player ever to make the switch and try to win in the NFL too. I mean, it could work out. He hasn't played this position ever before, so he doesn't have any bad habits. So if he's able to learn, he's a really athletic guy. Maybe this works out, and they get a guy that can do a couple of things for him.
Doesn't have any good ones either.
Well, I mean, it's easier to teach good ones than break bad ones.
So, I mean, look, this is just one of those stories, right, that we see. I remember a few years back, the 49ers had signed some guy that was like a huge rugby player or something like that. Kind of a similar situation, right? And people were all over it. Nothing ended up coming out of it. And I will be shocked if this guy makes the final 53 roster.
We'll see. At least it'll be a fun thing to watch.
It's just a fun thing to watch for right now. That's all.
Yeah. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of time for this evening. I wanted to hit you with two quick things, which you always remember. Make sure you tell 4 of your friends and 4 of your enemies. Just because they don't like you doesn't mean they won't like us. And it is never where you start. It's always where you finish. Any last thoughts, co-host?
Nope. Good to go.
All right. And AP, you can contact the Bills to see if they are doing any tryouts. That being said, we are out. That next
Play Callers.